Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. Today is the next video in my series of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Commander deck techs. I'm releasing a new TMNT Commander deck every Thursday through mid-April when Secrets of Strixhaven drops, in addition to my usual Monday Commander deck tech videos. Hey, it's the Turtles, and we're gonna have fun with it. So if you have a request for a specific TMNT Commander you'd like to see me build, let me know in the comments below. As you see, today our commander is the Neutrinos, humanoid aliens from Dimension X and friends of the Ninja Turtles. Even though Dimension X is the same war-filled realm that gave us Krang, one of the Turtles' longtime antagonists, the Neutrinos are fun-loving and averse to violence. They just want to pal around, looking like retrofuturist rejects from Happy Days, and having a good time. Even though I watched the 1987 series back in the day, I don't really remember these fellows, but I trust that they're cool to the max, daddy-o. Anyway, I'm excited to show you what I put together for the Neutrinos, but before we get started, let's go over my deck building template. I like to build my decks around my commander. I want to show off why it's such a cool card and why I built a deck around it. So I take 30 cards and I put them toward doing whatever my commander asks of me. This is our game plan. It's what we do at the table and how we try to win. 30 more cards go towards supporting that game plan in the form of card advantage, acceleration, and interaction pieces. I usually run 1 or 2 sweepers, sometimes more if they would play into the game plan, sometimes none at all, and I almost always keep to a floor of 38 lands. That way I can always hit my land drops and cast my spells and, play the game. So let's talk about our commander. The Neutrinos is a 2/4 legendary elf rebel for 2, a red, and a white. It has flying. It says whenever another creature we control enters, the Neutrinos gets +1/+0 until end of turn, and whenever the Neutrinos attack, exile up to 1 target creature you own, then return it to the battlefield under your control, tapped and attacking. So if you're new to Magic, welcome. I'm going to go over the ideas this deck is built around, both in terms of the mechanics and the way it plays at the table. Then I'll go through each card individually and talk about how it works and why it helps our plan. If you have questions, post them in the comments. A few weeks ago, I released a video on Dawn and Leo problem solvers. This was a blink deck, which refers to the act of exiling a permanent, then returning it to the battlefield as a new game object. If you want to hear me talk about why blinking, also called flickering, is useful, I've linked a timestamp to that in this video's description. In that deck, we took a more traditional approach to blinking our permanents, but as you can see, the Neutrinos are anything but traditional. When we declare them as an attacker, we can blink any of our other creatures, and it'll enter tapped and attacking. When that happens, the Neutrinos will see it re-enter the battlefield, and their alliance ability will trigger, giving them a little boost to their power. This kind of blink is pretty unique. Well, aside from the beloved meandering tower shell. But while Dirtle Turtle flickers itself very slowly, the Neutrinos want us to go fast, even simulating haste by blinking our creatures with summoning sickness to have them re-enter, tapped and attacking that same turn. To be clear, when a creature re-enters with the Neutrino's ability, that creature is attacking, but it wasn't declared as an attacker during the declare attacker step. That means it doesn't trigger any abilities that read when this creature attacks. That said, if the creature doesn't have summoning sickness, we can attack with it and the Neutrinos, then blink that creature with our commander's ability so that we can get its attack trigger and whatever effects we receive while blinking it. We can even stack the triggers so that, I'm getting ahead of myself. Our game plan is to play creatures that give us value when they enter, when they attack, or both. Then we swing in and double that value by blinking our most impactful friend. There's a lot of synergy to this deck, so we have ways to clear the path for our attackers, to build up an army of blockers since we're attacking every turn, to pump up our team so that every hit is a haymaker, and all the usual goodies we get in a blink strategy. Extra cards, extra tokens, extra life, extra lands, and so on. As I alluded to, there are some quirky rules wrinkles in this deck, so I'll be sure to explain those interactions with each card to which they apply, but it's not so complicated that it gets in the way of the fun. The Neutrinos wouldn't have that. They just want to cruise through our opponent's skies, pay them and their life totals a visit, spend a little time partying, then bop their way back onto the next shindig. Sure, they leave a little mess in their wake, but how much fun can you have if you're worrying over a few spilled drinks and filled graveyards? The Neutrinos are about good times, man, and when they spot a big creature on the sidewalk, they can't help but pull up to the curb, swing open the passenger door, and say, "Get in, loser, we're going to combat." You'll enjoy this deck if you like aggressive strategies that are simultaneously tricky and straightforward, or if you like the idea of blasting some tunes, scooting across the back seat to make more room, and picking up yet another +1 on your way to the Rager. So, As usual, this Moxfield list is linked in the video's description. At the bottom of it, you will see a considering section filled with cards that I considered putting in this deck, but for me, didn't ultimately make the cut. However, if you have a bigger budget or a smaller one, if you have an interest in this kind of strategy and you want more ideas for what to put into it, or if you like one of the things that I did and you really want to emphasize that considering section is great when you build your own the Neutrinos deck. We're going to begin with a section I'm calling Passengers. These are cards that are all creatures that either have a big power and toughness or give us value when we blink them. So they're all something that can fit into, I guess, the fourth seat of the Neutrinos car. So we're going to start with Knight of the White Orchid. This is double white for a 2/2 human knight with first strike that says when it enters, if an opponent controls more lands than us, we may search our library for a plains card, put it on the battlefield, and then shuffle. Notably, it does not say a basic plains, so we can find any of our dual-typed lands, and it also doesn't say put it on the battlefield tapped. So if we find something that is a land with two types, and it can come in untapped, then it will come in untapped. If the land itself says it comes in tapped, then that's fine. But we can also just find ourselves a basic plains if we need mana right that turn. What's nice is this is a catch-up mechanic. It only really finds something, in fact it'll only trigger, if an opponent has more lands than us. So a nice way to play this is if it's in our opening hand and we're not the first player of the game, then hopefully whoever's ahead of us in the turn cycle will get to 3 lands before we do on turn 3. So we can drop Knight of the White Orchid before we make our land drop that turn, tutor for plains, put it on the battlefield, then make our land drop, and hopefully we have another spell we can cast then. But either way, it is acceleration for us if we play it right, and at least it tutors us up a land if we're behind. Something important in Boros colors. Next is Terra Pact Intimidator, something we also have in here for acceleration, and it's just really cool. I just like this card. So this is a 2/1 Kavu Scout from Edge of Eternities for 1 and a red. It says when it enters, target opponent may have you create 2 Lander tokens. A Lander token is a Wayfarer's Bauble. It's an artifact token that if we pay 2, tap, and sacrifice it, we can search our library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So we get a rampant growth artifact, basically. That's what a Lander token is. We get 2 of them if an opponent wants to give them to us. And if they don't, we put 2 +1/+1 counters on the Intimidator. So typically this is going to come in and an opponent's going to say, yeah, I don't care if you get a 4/3 for 2, go ahead and have it, which is fine. But usually they're probably not going to say that. They're going to say, wait, a 4/3 for 2? No, you get 2 Lander tokens. You have to pay into those to just get yourself land. And we'll say that's fine. Then we attack with Neutrinos, flicker the Terra Pact Intimidator, and they have to decide whether or not they give us 2 more Wayfarer's Baubles, or now the Intimidator is attacking as a 4/3. And if it dies that time, that's totally alright. It means we've probably gotten 4 Lander tokens out of it, which gives us the ability to use as a mana sink these little Lander tokens, these Wayfarer's Bauble tokens, that will ramp us over and over and over. So we get essentially 4 pieces of ramp just sitting on the battlefield that we got for 2 mana, thanks to the Terra Pact Intimidator. And if they make it a 4/3, well then it's attacking more dangerously. That sounds great. Next we have Halia, Guided by Light. Love this card, from Edge of Eternities, goodness. For 2 and a white, we get a 3/3 legendary human soldier that says whenever she or another creature or artifact we control enters, gain 1 life. Think about getting all those Lander tokens from the Terra Pact Intimidator with Halia in play. That's the Intimidator triggering her, and both Lander tokens triggering her. That's 3 life we've gained just from 2 mana. Pretty great. In fact, it's even better because at the beginning of our end step, we draw a card if we've gained 3 or more life this turn. Doesn't have to be from Halia, just 3 or more life in any way. She's one of our best ways to gain it though, because she triggers on creatures and artifacts, including herself. We also have the warp ability for her. She can warp in for a single white, meaning instead of casting her for 2 and a white, we can pay a single white. She will enter the battlefield, and then at the end step, we'll exile her, and we're able to cast her from exile for her casting cost on a later turn. So this is really cool because we can do a little bit of something tricky with our commander. If we warp in Halia for just 1, she comes in, she enters, she gains us a life. Then we attack with the Neutrinos and flicker Halia. We blink her. She will re-enter, tapped and attacking. She'll see herself enter, so we'll gain another life. And now, at the end step, when we have this delayed warp trigger, it'll try and find Halia, but it won't be able to warp her away because she's been flickered since we warped her in. The version of Halia that we warped in is not what that card is now. That card has become a new game object, so this delayed trigger will still trigger, but it won't find the original Halia. It'll just look for it and not see the new version of Halia that we've gotten since we flickered her. So we've sort of cheated her into play. And assuming she can survive combat, since you have to be tapped and attacking when the Neutrinos flicker you, then sweet, we've gotten a 3/3 Soul Sister for a single mana. And hopefully, we stack the triggers at the end step so that if we've gained 3 or more life, even if we do have to warp her away, we'll still get some sweet life gain and card draw from Halia and our other things entering. That's why she's in here. We're going to be having things enter and leave the battlefield a lot, so when things come back in, Halia is going to give us a little bit of life and maybe even some card draw at the end step thanks to all those flickering triggers. Lauren of the Third Path is next. This is 2 and a white for a 2/1 legendary human artificer with vigilance. When she enters, we destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. That's pretty great. That's just something we can flicker if we want to attack with Lauren and then, flicker her with the Neutrinos. We don't have to attack with her, I guess. We just flicker her with the Neutrinos. She'll re-enter tapped and attacking, and she'll destroy something else. So we get a little bit of a disenchant on a stick here. Usually Lauren is not one of the cards that we want to flicker, but we sure can if we need to. However, we can also just attack with her, since she's got vigilance, and we can tap her, and we and target opponent each draw a card. This is great. We can use this politically. We can use this just to get our own card draw and give it to whomever is likeliest to be able, who's least likely rather, to be able to use that extra card. Someone who maybe is super far ahead already. In any case, Lauren is a source of card advantage for us. She's a good removal spell, and the fact that we can flicker her and remove more things is pretty great. Next we have Skyclave Apparition, very similar to Lauren in that sort of flicker her and get the same value out of it again. This is 2 and a double white, 2 and double white for a 2/2 Core Spirit that says when it enters, we exile up to 1 target non-land, non-token permanent that we don't control with mana value 4 or less. So not something huge, but something, and we get to exile it, and it's just gone. This is not one of those situations like a Banishing Light or a Banisher Priest or a Fiend Hunter where it comes back when the Skyclave Apparition leaves, because when the Skyclave Apparition leaves the battlefield, the exiled card's owner creates an XX blue illusion creature token where X is the mana value of the exiled card. What's interesting about that is if Skyclave Apparition enters and exiles something, and then when it leaves, that something is no longer exiled with it. For example, if it comes in and we exile an opponent's commander with it, and they choose to put the commander back in the command zone, well then when the apparition leaves, there will be nothing to give us the information about this blue illusion creature token, since there's nothing exiled with it anymore, so that creature's controller won't get a token. So what we want to do is play this, attack with the Neutrinos, play this, exile a commander, attack with the Neutrinos, flicker this so that now it's tapped and attacking, and it will re-enter, and we either get rid of something that could be a blocker for it, because we want to keep it around and we want to do some damage with it, or another commander, so that if it happens to leave the battlefield, no one still gets any value out of it. So we can be pretty tricky with the Skyclave Apparition. Splinter Aging Champion from the Ninja Turtles Commander deck is next. This is 2 and a white for a 2/2 legendary mutant ninja rat that says when it enters, we destroy up to 1 target tapped creature. We can only hit creatures that are tapped, but that's still pretty good. And when it leaves the battlefield, we and another target player each draw a card. So Splinter cares about entering and leaving the battlefield, and flickering Splinter with the Neutrinos is going to do both. It will leave and then it will enter, and we get both triggers. Pretty sweet. Caves of Chaos Adventurer is next. This is really cool. So this is 3 and a red for a 5/3 trampling human barbarian that says, when it enters, you take the initiative. Now what is the initiative? The initiative, let's talk about it. We have so many tokens in this deck, but the one that's most relevant to us here is the initiative. The initiative means when you take the initiative, and at the start of your upkeep, if you have the initiative, you venture into the Undercity. The Undercity is this dungeon. This is an older mechanic in Magic. Older now, I guess. It's been a few years since Commander Legends Baldur's Gate came out. The way this works is, this is a dungeon, and you put a little marker in the first room when you venture into it. Then, whenever you venture into it again, which is going to happen, like I mentioned, at the beginning of your upkeep while you have the initiative, and whenever you take the initiative, you will move to another room. You can't go laterally, you can only go forward. So if you go from the secret entrance to the forge, you can't then go to the Lost Well. When you move out of the forge, you can't go to the stash because you can only go to one of the rooms that are led to from the room you're in. Then, once it's done, once you get to the Throne of the Dead 3, you get its effect, and anytime you would then venture into the dungeon afterwards, you start back at the secret entrance. So, it gets you a lot of value basically every turn that you have or take the initiative, including the one you originally do it. And the way to take the initiative from someone is by having your creatures do combat damage to that player. When that happens, you take the initiative, so you would venture through the dungeon further. You don't have to restart every time the dungeon, or every time the initiative is taken from you. You just, maybe if you're in the forge and then someone takes the initiative from you, you attack them, do combat damage, you'll take it back, and you will venture into the next room from the forge. Just keep going through. So, a little bit of a complicated mechanic, but a fun one. The initiative is very powerful, which is why we have a few cards that take us through it. The Caves of Chaos Adventure being one of them. So for 3 and a red, we get a 5/3 Trampling Human Barbarian. When it enters, we take the initiative. That first room in the initiative is a Lay of the Land effect. It lets us search for a basic, reveal it, put it in our hand, and then shuffle. So we just get to draw a basic land, essentially, right then. So this sorts us out if we're behind on our lands. In addition, whenever the Caves of Chaos Adventurer attacks, we exile the top card of our library. If we've completed a dungeon, meaning we've ventured into the dungeon, into the Undercity, 5 times so far, and gotten through the Throne of the Dead 3, I believe it's called, then we can play that card this turn without paying its mana cost. Otherwise, you may play that card this turn. So when the Caves of Chaos Adventurer attacks, we exile the top card of our library. We can either play it this turn, or play it this turn without paying its mana cost. The fact that it says this turn means we don't have to do it right away during this attack. In fact, we're not allowed to unless timing rules would permit it. So if we exile a creature, then we have to wait till our second main phase in order to cast it. Seems pretty good. Caves of Chaos Adventurer gives us the ability to essentially draw a card to get access to a new card whenever it attacks. Now, notably, this is something I was talking about at the start of the video. If the Caves of Chaos Adventurer enters the battlefield this turn, we can't attack with it. We can flicker it with the Neutrinos and have it re-enter the battlefield tapped and attacking. That will not trigger this, because to attack, to trigger an ability that says whenever this creature attacks, it has to be declared as an attacker during the declare attacker step. So that's not going to happen the first turn it's in unless we somehow give it haste. However, on our second turn with it, we can declare it as an attacker and declare the Neutrinos as attacking, get its attack trigger, and then flicker it with the Neutrinos. So then it will re-enter the battlefield tapped and attacking. We did get its attack trigger, but now it's a new game object that also happens to be tapped and attacking. Most notably though, whether it attacked or not, if we flicker it, it is re-entering the battlefield, so we are retaking the initiative. Either taking it for the first time or taking it, it won't be for the first time since this enters, we take the initiative, we attack with the Neutrinos, flicker the Caves of Chaos Adventurer, it re-enters, and we take the initiative again. So now we are down to the second level, if that's where we were at the first level from the first one. So flickering our Caves of Chaos Adventurer is a nice way to retake the initiative even without doing combat damage to someone who has it, because it just says we take the initiative. We don't have to do combat damage to someone else with the initiative in order to take it back this way. So yeah, we have a couple of different ways of using the initiative in this deck. Caves of Chaos Adventurer is a great one because it's a 5/3 Trampler for 4. Pretty sweet. Next we have Eowyn, Fearless Knight from the Lord of the Rings set. 2, a red, and a white for a 3/4 legendary human knight with haste, so we can attack with Aowen the first turn it comes in if we want. When Aowen enters, exile target creature an opponent controls with greater power, meaning power greater than Aowen's power. Legendary creatures we control gain protection from each of that creature's colors until end of turn. So this is really sweet. This lets us give all of our legendary creatures, which includes Aowen, but also includes our commander, protection from whatever colors of the creature we exiled. So if our defending player's commander has a greater power than Aowen, we would like to just exile that, because in all likelihood that covers all, or at least most of the other colors of creatures in play for them. But otherwise, if we see that a player has a 4/4 white creature and they're playing white-blue and all of their creatures are white that are in play, well, protection means evasion. Protection means it can't be damaged, enchanted, equipped, blocked, or targeted by a creature of those colors. It doesn't even have to be controlled by the defending player. So this protects Aowen, this protects the Neutrinos, which are of course a legendary creature we control. It's pretty nice, and it's just unconditional removal. Doesn't even come back later. Sweet. Next is Headliner Scarlet from the Ravnica Clue edition. This is 3 and a red for a 3/3 legendary human warlock with haste that says when it enters, creatures target player controls can't block this turn. This is amazing. If we attack one player, Headliner Scarlet comes in, their creatures can't block, so all of our creatures are unblockable. Great. If we flicker this with our commander, we can choose a different player, and now we can attack 2 different players and neither of them can block us. And then if we flicker this every turn, it just means that whoever we're attacking, at least one player, is not going to be able to block us, so all of our creatures are unblockable. In addition, at the beginning of our upkeep, exile the top card of your library face down. You may look at it and play that card this turn. So it's an extra card we have access to. It's like it's being drawn for us. And if we don't use it, it just remains in exile face down for the rest of the game. And that's fine. We had access to it. We didn't need it. Totally good. Headliner Scarlet's totally worth the $5 in this deck. Memorial Team Leader is next. This is another Kavu from Edge of Eternities. It's a Kavu soldier. It's 3 and a red for a 4/3 that says during our turn, other creatures we control get +1/+0. This is just a constant anthem effect that gives all of our other creatures +1/+0 at all times, as long as it's our turn. Pretty great. In addition, we can warp it in for 1 and a red. So we can do the thing I mentioned for Halia. We warp this in for 1 and a red. Now all of our creatures are a little bit bigger. We attack with the Neutrinos and flicker Memorial Team Leader. Now it is tapped and attacking as a 4/3 and still giving us that anthem effect, and then it won't warp away at the end of the turn because it's a new game object. Just a solid inclusion for 4 mana. Pretty good. Solemn Simulacrum is next. This is the Sad Robot. 4 generic mana for a 2/2 artifact creature golem that says when it enters, we Rampant Growth. We search our library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. The same effect that we were talking about with those lander tokens from earlier. And when it dies, we can draw a card. So you can see why this is great to flicker. It comes in, we Rampant Growth. We attack with the Neutrinos, flicker it, now it's tapped and attacking, but it does re-enter, so we Rampant Growth again. Even if we lose it, we're going to draw a card when it dies. Pretty great. Torre d'Avant Fury Rider is next. Torre d'Avenant, pardon me. This is from Dominaria United. This is 1 double red and a white for a 3/3 legendary human knight with vigilance and trample, and whenever she attacks, all other attacking creatures we control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Other red attacking creatures we control get trample until end of turn, and untap each other white attacking creature we control. So this is a sweet deal. Tori only untaps other white creatures, only gives other red creatures trample. But it's fine because she doesn't need to be untapped. She's got vigilance and she doesn't need trample, she's already got it. But we sure would like it if she could have this +1/+1. So the idea with Tori in this deck is, even though it's great for us to, flicker her, what we really want to do is one of the sweet tricks with it, which is we attack with Tori and the Neutrinos. we put both of their abilities on the stack. This ability triggers whenever Tori attacks. The Neutrinos flicker ability triggers when they attack. So they'll go on the stack at the same time, and we can put them on the stack in whichever order we want. We choose Tori's ability to resolve second. So the way this works is Tori is a 3/3 untapped, because of vigilance, attacking creature. We use the Neutrinos to flicker her. Now she comes back into the battlefield, and she is a 3/3 tapped and attacking creature, because the Neutrinos bring her back in tapped and attacking, even though she has vigilance. Then, Tori's ability resolves, giving all other attacking creatures we control +1/+1 until end of turn. The word other here is doing a lot of work, because it means other than, not this card, but this game object, the Tori that attacked. But since Tori has been flickered, this is a new game object. It's been returned to the battlefield with our commander, so it is not the same as the Tori that attacked, it's a different creature. It's an other creature. Meaning, Tori will enter, and all of this will apply to Tori, even though it normally wouldn't, because it says other on every instance of, every clause of it. So the new Tori will enter as a 3/3, tapped and attacking. It will gain +1/+1, becoming a 4/4. It will gain trample, which is fine, it already had trample, but it will also untap, so it's like it got to keep its vigilance through that flicker. We're doing all this, and what does that give us? For Tori, it just gives her +1/+1, which is pretty good. It makes her a 4/4 vigilance trample, but that +1/+1 goes to all of our other attackers, including our commander. The trample goes to all of our other attackers, including our commander. The untap goes to all of our other attackers, including our commander. Obviously the trample to only red creatures and the untap to only white creatures, but yeah. So Tori, it's a cool trick in here that gives us a 4/4 untapped, attacking, trampling Tori de Avenant, which seems pretty fun, in addition to giving us all those benefits for all of our other attacking creatures, including our commander. Next up is Traxos, Scourge of Krug, a great card from Dominaria 2018. 4 generic mana for a 7/7 legendary artifact creature construct with trample. 7/7 trample for 4, what's the drawback? Well, it enters tapped, and it doesn't untap during our untap steps. We have to cast a historic spell to untap Traxos. Historic spells are artifacts, legendaries, and sagas. So we don't care about untapping Traxos. It would be nice if we can, because then we can untap him and block with him. But in order to attack with him, all we have to do is flicker him with our commander. Because it enters tapped, and it doesn't untap, but we flicker with our commander, and it enters tapped and attacking. So we didn't need it to be untapped for us to declare it as an attacker. We just flicker it, and now we've got a 7/7 trampling attacker coming in, and our opponents have to deal with that. Hopefully, post-combat, we can play an artifact, or a legendary creature, or even one of our sagas, and it will untap, and now we can block with it too. Pretty sweet. Next up is Warren Warleader. This is 2 and double white for a 4/4 Rabbit Knight with Offspring 2, meaning we can pay 2 generic mana as an additional cost, meaning a total of 4 generic and 2 white. And when we do, it comes in not just as a 4/4 Rabbit Knight, but it comes in with a 1/1 token copy of itself, so a 1/1 Rabbit Knight that has the same additional abilities. So 2 rabbits, that seems pretty good. Those abilities are, whenever we attack, we can choose to either create a 1/1 white rabbit creature token that's tapped and attacking, so a bonus bunny, or attacking creatures we control get +1/+1 until end of turn. So we could do the Tori de Avenant trick with this if we want to, by attacking with it, flickering it, it comes back in, but we don't really need to, because it doesn't say other attacking creatures we control. This is just a good body for us that we can choose to flicker if we want. It is worth noting, though, if we offspring this and we flicker it, it will not come back in with an additional token offspring. It just gets it the first time when we cast it. So this is just a nice attack trigger for us that either makes us tokens or, more often, pumps up our whole team, including our commander and itself if we attack with it. Next we have Angel of Invention, 3 and double white for a 2/1 angel with flying, vigilance, and lifelink, and fabricate 2, meaning when it enters, we can either put 2 1/1 counters on it, or make 2 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature tokens. and it says other creatures we control get +1/+1. That includes these servos that we make. So for 5 mana, a 2/1 that comes with essentially 2/2s is not terrible. So the way we normally play this in this deck is we cast the Angel, it comes in, and we make the servos. Then we flicker it when we attack with our commander, and it re-enters tapped and attacking, and fabricates 2 again. At that point, if we've got no blockers in the air, it's fine to just make the servos again. Now we've got 4 2/2s, that's great value. But if we have blockers in the air, or we just want to push more damage, we can put 2 counters on it, and now it is a 4/3 flying lifelinker. Even though it has vigilance, it is tapped and attacking thanks to our commander, but still pretty good. And now we've got a 4/3 in the air that we can either flicker again next turn and either make those servos or make it back into a 4/3, since when it comes in, it won't come back with those counters it had, or just leave it there, being a good anthem for our creatures. Next up is Cloud Goat Ranger. This one's super fun. 3 and double white for a 3/3 Giant Warrior Ranger. It says when it enters, we make 3 1/1 white Kithkin Soldier creature tokens. These Kithkin are important for other cards in the deck. And it says tap 3 untapped Kithkin you control, and this creature gets +2/+0 and gains flying until end of turn. So here's how this plays out. We play the Cloud Goat Ranger. It enters, we make 3 Kithkin. We attack with our commander, and we flicker the Ranger. It will re-enter, tapped and attacking, and we make 3 more Kithkin. Then, before blockers, we can tap 3 of our Kithkin that we just made and give it +2/+0 and flying, and now it's a 5/3 flying tapped and attacking creature. Pretty great. We don't have to do anything with the other 3 Kithkin. We can just have them sit back and block if we want to. Or we could tap them as well, and activate this ability again. It can't gain flying a second time, but it could sure get an additional +2/+0, making it a 7/3 flying attacker. That's pretty good. And then every time we do this, every time we flicker it again, we get 3 more Kithkin that we can use to pump it up, or block, or do whatever else we need to. I love it. Next up, we have Goliath Paladin. This is 4 and a white for a 3/6 Giant Knight with Vigilance, and when it enters, we take the initiative. Very simple card. It's actually a common from Baldur's Gate, but great for our deck because it's a big body. Even if it's not going to get through every defense with its 3 power, it's likely not to be killed too easily either, and we can attack with this vigilantly even if we don't want to flicker it. So we can have this as an additional attacker that maybe benefits from things like War Leader giving us a bonus for all of our attacking creatures. Or we can flicker it and take the initiative again, and that can give us a lot. The second level of the initiative can go to the Forge and put 2 1/1 counters on something, which would make this a 5/8? Pretty great. Even if we lose out on the Vigilance, since we flickered it with our commander for that turn, a 5/8 that takes us the initiative, that sounds good. Platoon Dispenser is next. This is 5 generic mana for a 4/6 artifact creature construct from the Brothers' War. It says at the beginning of our end step, if we control 2 or more other creatures, we draw a card. So the likelihood of us drawing cards is pretty high. We make a lot of tokens in this deck, we have a lot of creatures that we're running. Sounds good. We can also just pay 3 and a white to make a 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature token. So a little bit of a mana sink there. And it's got a good body for us to attack with, or block with. What's great though is we can unearth it. That's really the reason it's in this section. Unearth means we can pay 2 and double white when this is in our graveyard to put it back into the battlefield, and it gains haste until end of turn, and it says at the end of the turn, we exile it, and if it would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. So if it dies, it goes to exile. At the end of turn, it's going to go to exile anyway, but we get a second shot with it. It comes back and it has haste. We can attack with it. We can activate its ability. It will stick around till the end step, so we've got this end step trigger. Yeah, all that's very nice. But imagine attacking with this or blocking with it and having it die. Then at the start of one of our turns, during our first main phase, we unearth it. It comes back into play, it's got haste, and we know that wherever it goes by the end of the turn, it's going to be in exile. So we just attack with our commander and exile it right then. Because Unearth specifically has a sort of cutout in its rules for blink effects. Because as long as it goes to exile, rather than anywhere else, Unearth doesn't care what happens after it's gone to exile. So blinking it sends it to exile and brings it right back. Now it no longer has that unearth clause the same way that warp works. So we've got it, it's tapped and attacking. Assuming it survives combat, it will still have that unearth delayed trigger at the end step, but it won't be able to find the platoon dispenser because this is a new game object, because we blinked it. So pretty nice as another little cheat for us around these rules. Sally Pride Lioness Leader is next. 3 and double white for a 2/4 legendary cat mutant rebel. It's a rebel, just like our commander, that says whenever Sally Pride enters, we make X 2/2 red mutant creature tokens, where X is the number of non-token creatures you control. So the bigger our board, the bigger it gets. Pretty great. It doesn't even say other non-token creatures you control. So we cast Sally, and Sally's going to make at least one mutant, even if she's the only creature that we control. And whenever she attacks, we put a 1/1 counter on each creature we control. So we can do the Tori D'Avenant trick with Sally here. We have her come in, we make a bunch of mutants, we attack with Sally and all those mutants, and our commander, and we put both attack triggers on the stack. We have Sally's resolve second. Sally gets flickered. She comes back in, tapped and attacking, and makes a bunch of mutants again. So now we have mutants from the first time she came in that are attacking, mutants from the second time she came in that are untapped, and Sally tapped and attacking along with our commander. Then her trigger resolves, and all of our creatures, including herself, all the mutants we made the first time that are attacking, the mutants we made the second time that are not, and our commander, all get a 1/1 counter. So those counters, I tried to stay away from them somewhat in this deck, simply because when you blink a creature with counters on it, it comes back into play without those counters. But this is a huge, huge bomb for our deck. It really doubles up our creatures and then doubles them again, or sort of triples them, I should say, because it doesn't count the tokens that we made the first time when it comes in the second time. But each time we're making more and more tokens we can attack with, we can block with, and they're all pumped up thanks to Sally's attack. Pretty great. Another one from the Ninja Turtle set is Slash Reptile Rampager. This is 3 and double red for a 7/5 legendary mutant berserker turtle with an alliance trigger. Whenever another creature we control enters, Slash deals 2 damage to each opponent. Just a free shock to each opponent every time we have a creature come in. It doesn't even say non-token. And whenever Slash attacks, we make a 2/2 red mutant creature token, the same kind that Sally Pride makes. So that will trigger Slash. So Slash is not here because blinking him is great. He's here because he's a 7/5. So we can definitely blink him if we want to, especially after we've attacked with him and we get that mutant in there. So we can do the trick, the Tori D'Avenant trick, by attacking with Slash, putting its ability on the stack, flickering him with our commander, and then making that mutant. It's not really going to give us a benefit, but we sure could do it if we feel like it. Maybe we have something else that cares about creatures leaving the battlefield. That'll come up a little later on. Also, I should mention that what's cool about Slash is I made a Brawl deck for him. If you're someone who plays Magic Arena, check out the video's description and you will see a Slash Brawl deck already made up, linked in the video's description. Next up is Angel of Indemnity. This is 5 and a white for a 5/5 flying lifelinking angel warrior. Already pretty great. And when it enters, we return target permanent card with mana value 4 or less from our graveyard to the battlefield. So we did just get to reanimate something, mana value 4 or less. That could even be a land, if we end up with a land in our graveyard somehow. Pretty good. And something great for us to flicker and return things over and over, because we're going to attack with our 5/5 flying lifelinker anyway. That's a Baneslayer Angel, sure. It also has Encore for 6 and double white, which is expensive. What that means is, while it's in the graveyard, we can pay 6 and double white and exile it, and make a token copy of it for each opponent we have. Those token copies gain haste, and they have to attack a different opponent. So if we've got 3 opponents, we will get 3 copies of the Angel of Indemnity. They will each attack a different opponent, and then at the beginning of the next end step, we sacrifice them. We activate Encore only as a sorcery. So for 8 mana, we get 3 5/5s, assuming 3 opponents, with flying and lifelink and haste that we have to attack with that turn, but each of them enter, and so we get to bring something back for each of those angels. Pretty good. Next we have Anti-Causal Vestige, also from Edge of Eternities. This is an Eldrazi, a 7/5 Eldrazi for 6 generic mana that says when it leaves the battlefield, we draw a card, and then we can put a permanent with mana value less than or equal to the number of lands we control from our hand onto the battlefield tapped. So we get to, it's not casting something, we sort of get to ramp something out based on the amount of lands we have, and we get to draw a card as well. We can either, or even, if we have a land in hand we want to play out, we can just use the Vestige to put it there. That seems pretty good. And this triggers on leaving the battlefield. So we flicker this with our commander, it leaves, we get this trigger, obviously it re-enters as well, and we're attacking with a 7/5 tapped and attacking trampler, or tapped and attacking Eldrazi, I should say. It does not trample. So that leaves the battlefield trigger is very nice for us, and it has warp for 4 generic mana, meaning we can warp this in, and do the warp trick with it. Attack with our commander, flicker this, it will leave the battlefield and give us this trigger, and now we're attacking with it, and it won't get sent to exile from its delayed warp trigger. However, it's also fine if we just warp this in and don't flicker it, because when it warps away, it will leave the battlefield and we'll get this trigger, then we can cast it again later. Yeah, but if we can do it with our commander, we might as well. Next up is Belonging. This is from the Lorben Eclipsed Commander product that just came out recently. 5 and a white for a 6/6 elemental incarnation that when it enters, we make 3 colorless shapeshifter creature tokens with Changeling. Changeling means those tokens are every creature type. So if we care about, for example, Kithkin, the Cloud Goat Ranger can tap those shapeshifters because they are Kithkin. They have every creature type. You're going to see a couple of other ways that that's relevant in the deck later on. Just nice to be able to have them have Changeling. But otherwise, it's a 6/6 that when it enters, we make 3 friends. That's a big body that comes in company with 3 little guys, so of course we want to flicker this. And much like the Angel of Divinity, it has Encore for 6 and double white. We exile it from our graveyard, we make a token copy that's going to attack each opponent, and we only get them for this turn. But each one of them comes with 3 shapeshifter creature tokens with Changeling, so for 8 mana, we get 3 6/6s and 9 1/1s, assuming, of course, 3 opponents. Pretty good. Duke Ulder Ravenguard from Commander Legends Baldur's Gate is next. A 5/5 legendary human noble soldier for 4, a red and a white, that says at the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature you control gains haste and myriad until end of turn. Myriad is an interesting mechanic. It says whenever that creature attacks, we make a token copy of it for each opponent other than the defending player, and those copies are tapped and attacking each of those other players or a planeswalker they control, and we exile the tokens at the end of combat. So it's sort of like saying, you know, if we were to give Belonging Myriad, we would attack opponent A. If we have an opponent B and an opponent C as well, Myriad will trigger, and we will get a Belonging copy for each of the of opponent A and opponent B, attacking either those opponents or a planeswalker they control. Both of those copies will come in and do the enters trigger for Belonging. And now we have a bunch of little shapeshifter tokens. Even better, if we then attack with our commander and flicker the original Belonging, we can have it re-enter, now attacking a different opponent. So now there are 2 Belongings coming at one opponent, the original, or rather the actual card version, and one of the Myriad copies. We have one opponent that's getting hit with a Myriad copy, and the last opponent, which was the person we originally attacked with the original Belonging, who's not being attacked at all. At least by a Belonging. They might be getting attacked by our commander. So we can really make things messy by using Myriad to make token copies of the creatures we have. Pretty sweet to be able to see things like Anti-Causal Vestige, make copies of that. They're going to get exiled, and those token copies are leaving the battlefield, so it will get that trigger. You know, we make Myriad copies of Goliath Paladin, and we take the initiative with a bunch of things. We make Myriad copies of Slash. Those copies, or the original if we choose, are going to have to be put in the graveyard thanks to the legend rule, but they will all see each other enter. And so since that's 3 slashes, each seeing 2 other slashes enter, that means each of them is going to do a total of 4 damage to each opponent, which means 12 damage to each opponent total, just for attacking. Plus, the Duke does also give one of our creatures haste, which could be relevant. So yeah, this is not super synergistic with our blink strategy, but it really works well with the kind of creatures that do work well with our blink strategy, so it's a great supplement to all that. Next up, we have Sanctuary Warden. This is 4 and double white for an Angel Soldier that's a 5/5 flyer that enters with 2 shield counters on it. Shield counters are a specific type of counter that mean this. Whenever a creature with a shield counter on it would be destroyed or would receive damage, even if that damage wouldn't destroy it. Instead, replace the event of that destruction or that damage by removing a shield counter. Sort of similar to if you would untap a creature with a stun counter on it, you replace the untap with a removal of the stun counter. Shield counters just make it so a creature that would take damage or would be destroyed doesn't, and instead you lose the counter. Kind of nice. And whenever the Sanctuary Warden enters or attacks, we may remove a counter from a creature or planeswalker we control. It can be one of these shield counters. And if we do, we draw a card and we make a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. So every time we have the Sanctuary Warden enter or attack, we basically take a shield counter off of it, draw a card, and make a 1/1. So we have this come into play. It comes in with 2 shield counters on it. It sees itself enter, we remove a shield counter, draw a card, and make a 1/1. Then we go to combat with our commander and flicker it. It will enter tapped and attacking, and we do the same thing again. We draw a second card, make a second citizen, by removing one of these 2, now freshly 2 counters on it. The next turn, if we want to, we can attack with it with our commander and do the Tori de Avenant trick. We attack with the Sanctuary Warden and have its trigger resolve first. This is different from the way Tori normally works. We remove the other shield counter from it, draw a card, make a citizen, then have our commander's ability resolve, flickering the Warden. It's now tapped and attacking the way it already was, but it comes back in with 2 shield counters on it, and it has entered again, so we can again draw a card and make a citizen by removing one of those shield counters. But now it's tapped and attacking and has 1 shield counter left on it. So drawing a lot of cards, making little 1/1s with this, and still having a 5/5 flyer to attack with. Lots of fun. Next up is Trumpeting Carnosaur. Love this guy. Big dino. 4 and double red for a 7/6 dinosaur with trample. Already sold. When it enters, we discover 5. Discover means we exile cards from the top of our library until we exile a spell that is mana value 5 or less. A non-land, that is, that's mana value 5 or less. We can then cast that spell without paying its mana cost, or put it in our hand, and then every other card we exiled, generally any lands that were on top of our library, go on the bottom of our library in a random order. So Trumpeting Carnosaur gives us a free spell when it enters. We just find the top spell of our library that's no more than 5 mana, and just cast that for free, or put it in our hand if we don't want to, cast it right away. So for 6 mana, we get a 7/6 Trampler that comes with a free extra spell, which in our deck is pretty likely to be a creature. That seems good, and it happens every time it enters, so if we flicker this with our commander, it will come back in, tapped and attacking, as a 7/6 Trampler that will discover 5 again. Or it has a channel ability, even though it's not tagged as channel. While it's in our hand, we can pay 2 in a red and discard it to have it deal 3 damage to a creature or planeswalker. So if we really need this as removal, maybe we draw it early and we need a little bit of interaction, we can throw this in the graveyard. We don't get a lot of the value that we could have gotten from it, but it's nice to have that flexibility as well. Next we have Angel of Serenity. This is an expensive one, 4 and triple white for a 5/6 flying angel. But what it does is when it enters, we may exile up to 3 other target creatures from the battlefield and or creature cards from graveyards. And then, when this creature leaves the battlefield, return the exiled cards to their owner's hands. So, in one way, this is a removal spell. We have it enter, and then we attack with our commander, we flicker it, we have it enter again, and we get rid of 3 creatures on the battlefield that our opponents control both times. Total of 6 creatures, and we can do that every turn when we're attacking with this 5/6 flyer. Amazing. Those creatures are going to go back to their owner's hands, so we know that once this leaves the battlefield, either because it's been flickered or because it's died. So we know that we want to hit things that don't have a lot of huge value when they enter the battlefield, but just getting rid of commanders, for example. 3 is a pretty common number for the number of opponents who have their commanders in play once you get your 7 drop out. So just getting rid of those means we don't have to worry about them going back to their owner's hands, since they're probably going to go back to the command zone. And if our opponent says, no, I'd rather just leave it in exile because you're just going to flicker that and I'll get it back into my hand so I don't have to pay the commander tax, then we say great, and we simply don't flicker the Angel of Serenity if we don't want to. But being able to clean up the board over and over with the Angel of Serenity is very powerful. However, it's also notable that it says target creatures, not target creatures your opponents control, and from the battlefield or creature cards from graveyards. So we can use this to get rid of opponents' creatures in their graveyards to hose their graveyard strategies. Or we can say, hey look, I know your big creature died, I will exile it with Angel of Serenity, and then it'll go back to your hand when I flicker the Angel, so you'll have it back. I'll do that for you if you leave me alone for 2 turn cycles, or 1 turn cycle, or whatever deal we want to make. So we can use this politically. We can also use this to recur our own creatures, or protect the creatures we have in play. If we think a board wipe is coming, we can use the Angel of Serenity to exile our own creatures from play. Then when the board wipe comes, it kills the Angel, our creatures come back to our hand, we can recast them. But even better than that is if our creatures have already died, we exile those cards from the graveyard, and then we flicker the Angel, and those cards are going to come back to our hand, and we're all set. We just get to recast them. Very strong card here. That's why it's 7 mana. Also 7 mana is Appa the Vigilant. 5 and double white for a 6/6 legendary bison ally with flying and vigilance. This is from Avatar, of course. It says whenever Appa or another ally we control enters, creatures we control get +1/+1 and gain flying and vigilance until end of turn. So again, this is a vigilant creature that if we flicker it, it's going to come in tapped and attacking, but it's a flyer, and that seems pretty good. So it comes in, and it does not say other creatures, so we don't have to do the Tori D'Avenant trick with this if we don't want to give it +1/+1 flying and vigilance. But we would like to, because it comes in, and all of our creatures get +1/+1 flying and vigilance. Then we attack with our commander, flicker Appa. Now Appa is attacking that same turn and gets +1/+1, and so do all of our other creatures a second time. Pretty good. In addition, Appa doesn't trigger only on his own entry, but if we're flickering Appa, that's fine. It gives us a lot of value from that. He also triggers whenever we have other allies enter the battlefield. Do we have any other allies in this deck? Well, there's no way to know. It's gone off the screen. But one thing I can tell you is that Belonging enters and makes 3 1/1 colorless shapeshifter creature tokens with Changeling. Changelings have every creature type, including ally, which means if Appa is in play, whether or not we're attacking with him, and we flicker or just play Belonging will enter, make 3 shapeshifter tokens with Changeling, which is to say Appa will see 3 allies enter, so Appa's ability will trigger 3 times. All of our creatures will get flying, vigilance, and +3/+3, including Appa and those tokens and the Belonging. So being able to get a lot more value out of Belonging with Appa in play, yes, I know what you're thinking. Well, that's 6 mana and 7 mana, so 13 mana gives us a lot of value. Of course it does, but this is 2 creatures, and we're able to repeat this with our commander. Very powerful here. Next up, we have Combat Thresher, one of my favorite cards to put in any white blank deck. This is a 7 generic mana, 3/3 artifact creature construct with double strike, and when this creature enters, we draw a card. So a 3/3 double strike that draws us a card for 7, it's fine. It's not terrible. But it also has Prototype for 2 and a white. which is to say, prototype, if we cast a spell for its prototype cost, now it has that mana cost, that color, and that size, which is 1/1. So we cast this for 2 and a white, which is the only intention we have in this deck. And it comes in as a 1/1 white double striking artifact creature construct that draws us a card. So 3 mana, we get a 1/1 double striker that draws us a card. That's okay. We then flicker this with our commander. When it flickers, it comes back with its standard stats. It is now a colorless 3/3 double striker, and it draws us a card again. 3/3 double strike is nothing to sneeze at. People can certainly block that if they want to, but we're likely to trade with most anything that they block it with, and it's already drawn us 2 cards at that point. Pretty good for 3 mana. Next up is Curious Colossus. This is also from Lorwyn Eclipsed. A 7/7 giant warrior for 5 and double white. When this creature enters, each creature target opponent controls loses all abilities, becomes a coward in addition to its other types, and has base power and toughness 1/1. This does not say until end of turn. So the idea is, I have tagged this, even though it isn't technically one, as a Wrath. Because we get to choose one player, and now all of their creatures are 1/1 cowards with no abilities, including their commander if they had one in there. So the likelihood that they're going to chump block with their creatures is pretty high, especially their commander, so they can send it back to the command zone and recast it. But it does mean that unless their board was quite wide, we can attack with impunity. So we play the Curious Colossus. One player's board is completely humbled. That's what it means to make something into a 1/1 with no abilities. And then we either attack with this, or rather we attack with our commander and flicker this. Now this is a 7/7 attacker attacking into a board of 1/1 cowards with no abilities. So Curious Colossus can really mess up at least 2 players, and if we keep recurring it, or keep blinking it with our commander, we get to keep making opponents' boards 1/1 ability, 1/1 vanilla cowards over and over, which can really hurt someone if they're like, well, I lost, I have my 5 creatures that were in player humbled, but I can at least play another creature. Oh, you're going to do it again? Come on! So that's why it feels like a Wrath to me. Myr Battlesphere is next. This is so cool. 7 generic mana for a 4/7 artifact creature Myr construct that says when it enters, we make 4 1/1 colorless Myr artifact creature tokens. So a 4/7 that comes with 4 1/1s, very good. And when it attacks, we may tap X untapped Myr we control, as many as we like. If we do, this creature gets +X/+0 until end of turn and deals X damage to the player or planeswalker it's attacking. So we cast this. We make 4 Myr. We attack with it next turn. We tap all 4 of those Myr, it becomes an 8/7, and we do 4 damage to the player or planeswalker that we're attacking with it. That seems good. But do you know what else seems good? Attacking with, or casting this, and then flickering it, so that when it comes back in, we've made an additional 4 Myr. It's a 4/7, so it's probably not going to die from that, because this is an attack trigger, so we're not going to be able to do this if we attack with if we attack with our commander and flicker the Battlesphere and have it come back in and tapped and attacking. But the next turn, we can attack with this, and now we have 8 Myr creature tokens. We can attack all of them, make this into a 12/7, and do 8 damage to whoever we're attacking. That's crazy. But it doesn't say that you have to tap these same Myr that we have here. Just like we talked about with Appa, Belonging makes shapeshifter creature tokens with Changeling. Changeling gives them the Myr type, so we can also tap those with Myr Battlesphere and get even more direct damage and more pump to our Battlesphere. So pretty nice to be able to flicker this just to get more Myr tokens, and then to attack with it and use all those Myr tokens to do direct damage and make it really huge. Last in this section is Bygone Colossus. This is the simplest warp creature we've got. This is 9 generic mana for an artifact creature robot giant that is a 9/9 with warp 3. All we want to do with this is cast it for its warp cost and flicker it. Then it re-enters tapped and attacking as a 9/9 That is a vanilla creature, basically. The warp delayed trigger will go on the stack at the end of the turn. It won't be able to find the original Bygone Colossus because this is a new game object. And now we've just got a 9/9 we can attack with, we can block with, whatever we want. Very simple, very cheap for a huge, scary thing in Commander. Love it. And that is our passenger section. Oh hey, did you just tap that like button? Nice. I'm just kidding. You don't have to like the video if you don't want to. I appreciate you being here no matter what. Anyway, thanks for watching this far. Let's keep it going. So we are going to go into the sections that supplement our game plan in a moment. First, though, I want to talk about the sections that support it. We talked about those in our deck building template, so we're going to start with our card advantage section, which as usual I've tagged as draw. It doesn't mean all these cards actually do the game action of drawing us a card. They just give us access to more cards that we can play. So Mind Stone is actually not a great example of it. This is really more in the deck for acceleration. This is a 2-mana artifact that taps for colorless mana, so it's a mana rock. But we can pay 1, tap and sack it to draw a card. So this is something we could do if we're desperate for card draw, but really it's for later on once we've gotten plenty of mana production and we can then cash in our Mind Stone for a different card. We've seen Halia. Halia can draw us a card during our end step if we've gained 3 or more life this turn, which she can help us do. Lauren, we can tap in order to have one of our opponents and ourselves draw a card. Professional Facebreaker is next. This is also in the deck more for acceleration, but we do have the ability to get some card advantage from it. For 2 and a red, we have a 2/3 Human Warrior with Menace that says whenever 1 or more creatures we control deal combat damage to a player, we make a treasure token. Treasure token's pretty great, and then we can sacrifice a treasure to exile the top card of our library, and we're allowed to play it this turn. That is how we get card advantage from the Facebreaker. Notably here, it says we only get a treasure when 1 or more creatures deal combat damage to a player. But it says to a player. So if we attack multiple players, which we have several ways of doing, particularly with Myriad, then each player that gets dealt combat damage by our creatures is going to trigger the Facebreaker, so we can make multiple treasures from the Facebreaker in the same combat phase. Rumor Gatherer is next. Love this card from Streets of New Capenna. Look at this. This bear has a box or a briefcase. This elephant has a scroll or a rolled up piece of paper. This giraffe has a little letter. This goat's just hanging out, as is this bird. What a cool card. Anyway, let's actually talk about what the card does. 1 and double white for a 2/1 elf wizard with an alliance trigger. Whenever another creature we control enters, scry 1. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, draw a card instead. So that means the first creature we have come in, Rumor Gatherer will scry us 1. The second time a creature comes in, we'll draw a card. The third time we'll scry, and the fourth time and every time after that we will also scry, because we only draw the second time, not every other time. But the likelihood that in our deck we're going to be playing a creature, then attacking with our commander and flickering a creature is pretty high, so it means we sort of have a free opt every turn, where we're scrying and then drawing, and then maybe scrying some more. Splinter, Aging Champion, we've already seen. He draws us a card, as well as letting another player draw a card whenever he leaves the battlefield. The Restoration of Iganjo is next. This is a cool one in this deck. For 2 and a white, we get a Saga. Sagas are historic, relevant for Traxos. Sagas, when they first enter, we put a lore counter on them, and then it triggers that first chapter ability. Then the next turn, at the start of our first main phase, we put another lore counter on it, and it triggers the next ability. The phase after that, or the turn after that, first main phase, we trigger its third ability by putting the third lore counter on it, and normally after that ability has left the stack, we sacrifice it, but Restoration of Iganjo works a little differently, so we'll go through it. When we first play it, it gets its first lore counter, and we search our library for a basic Plains, reveal it, put it in our hand, and shuffle. It just draws us a Plains, essentially. That's okay. Sometimes we need extra lands. Now we've got one. Next turn, we may discard a card. When we do, we return target permanent with mana value 2 or less from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So what's nice about this is, if we didn't need that Plains that we drew last turn, we could just discard it. And then recur one of our small things, of which we have plenty. Most of our deck is bigger than mana value 2, but you know what isn't? That Plains. So we can discard this Plains and then return it to the battlefield tapped. which is acceleration. If we have another land in hand, or we've drawn another land or something, then this is a land coming into play tapped. It's true, albeit tapped, but we didn't have to use our land drop to get it into play, so that is acceleration for us technically. And the last ability is we exile the Saga and return it to the battlefield transformed as Architect of Restoration. It'll come in as a 3/4. This is not just transforming on the battlefield, it is exiling and then coming in as a creature, an enchantment creature, Fox Monk. That means this will trigger our alliance abilities, like Rumor Gatherer, or Slash, or our commander. So we get this 3/4 Vigilant Fox Monk into play that says whenever it attacks or blocks, we make a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token. So we get to make little spirit creatures, and that seems good. You know what else is good? If we attack with our commander and we flicker the Architect, it will come back tapped but not attacking, because it can't attack if it comes back in as its front side, which a modal double or a double-faced card will always come into the battlefield with its front face up unless we do something to make it come in otherwise. Like a modal double-faced card, we could choose to have come in with its back face up. This is a transforming double-faced card, so it's going to come in front face up. It'll come in tapped, but not attacking, because Sagas can't attack unless they're creatures. So this is a way for us to get a little more value out of our commander by having the Architect of Restoration come in. It's got Summoning Sickness, but let's say it doesn't. Let's say it's the next turn. We attack with it, it will give us a spirit creature token. We flicker it at the same time, and it comes back in as Restoration of Iganjo, and we'll get its first trigger again, and we'll get to go tell the story again. So this is a way for us to get repeatable value here, including repeatable recursion value. But if all we're doing with it is just making sure we always have a plains in hand and giving ourselves a few 1/1 spirit tokens, that's pretty fine. We've seen the Caves of Chaos Adventurer. Whenever it attacks, we get to exile the top card of our library, and either we can play it this turn, or we can play it this turn without paying its mana cost if we've completed a dungeon. Headliner Scarlet, at the beginning of our upkeep, exiles the top card of our library face down, and we can look at it and play it this turn. Pretty good. Saravek's Tome is next. This is 4 generic mana for an artifact that when it enters, we take the initiative. This is our third, and I believe our last initiative card. We can't flicker this because our commander can only flicker creatures, but it takes the initiative for us, and that's all right. It taps for colorless mana, and if we have the initiative, it taps for 2 colorless mana instead. So the first turn it comes in, it sort of refunds us by 2. We can use that mana on something right away. And then for 3 and tap, we can exile cards from the top of our library until we exile a non-land card. We can cast that card without paying its mana cost, but we can only activate this if we've completed a dungeon. So another reward for completing a dungeon, the same as our Caves of Chaos Adventurer. Typically, Saravek's Tome is going to come in, make 2 mana for us that turn, and then every turn thereafter it will make 2 or 1 if we've lost the initiative. Totally fine if we have, because we're going to be attacking anyway, so we want to take it back. Pretty good. Saravek's Tome is great acceleration for us, and does give us the eventual way of finding and casting a spell for free. Solemn Summon the Alacrum, we've already seen. When it dies, we draw a card. Platoon Dispenser draws us a card at our end step if we control 2 or more other creatures besides it. Anti-Causal Vestige draws us a card when it leaves the battlefield, and then we can put a permanent into play tapped. Pretty good. Sanctuary Warden draws us a card and makes a citizen whenever it enters or attacks, and we remove a counter from one of our creatures. We don't have any planeswalkers in this deck. Trumpeting Carnosaur discovers 5, which gives us access to another spell that we may be able to cast, and we can put into our hand otherwise. And Combat Thresher just draws us a card whenever it enters, whether we have cast it or whether we flicker it. And that is our card advantage section. Let's talk about acceleration now, which is here. Great. So again, I just shorthanded as ramp. So obviously we're running Soul Ring. We have a bunch of expensive creatures and other permanents in this deck, so we want to make sure we have access to plenty of mana. For 1 generic mana, this is a Mana Rock. It's an artifact that taps for 2 colorless mana, and it's great. Just very, very powerful, which is why it's the symbol of the format. So obviously. Springleaf Drum is next. This is also very good in our deck. A single generic mana for an artifact that if we tap it and tap an untapped creature we control, we get to add 1 mana of any color. What's the likelihood that we're going to have untapped creatures? Probably pretty good. Well, but then we've tapped them, so we can't attack with them. But we sure can use this to tap a creature that we're planning to flicker that turn, and then flicker it. And it will come back in, and it'll still be tapped, but now it's attacking as well. So we got to tap it for mana and for the attack, essentially. Pretty sweet. Wayfarer's Bauble is next. We already talked a little bit about lander tokens. Here is the original. For a single generic mana, we get an artifact with pay 2, tap and sack it, Rampant Growth. Search for a basic, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So this is great for a deck that doesn't have green in it. It just gives us access to Rampant Growth, and we can break it up over the course of a couple of turns. I always like an opening hand that has at least 2 lands and a Wayfarer's Bauble in it, because I can play this on turn 1, crack it on turn 2, and we're going into turn 3 with 3 mana already. Love it. Arcane Signet. Obviously, the best mana rock we can run. This is 2 generic mana for an artifact that taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. That is, in this deck, white or red. So an untapped 2 mana rock that makes both of our colors? Yeah, we want it. Boros Signet is another untapped 2 mana rock that makes both of our colors, but we have to pay a mana into it to activate it. But when we do, it makes both of our colors. Taps for red and a white, 2 mana. So we're tapping 2 mana sources, whatever we're using to activate this, and the Signet itself, and we're getting 2 mana, but it does fix our colors, and that's all we need. We've seen Knight of the White Orchid. It does catch us up by finding us a plains and putting it on the battlefield tapped, if when it enters, we have fewer lands than another opponent. Mindstone we've also seen. Cost 2, taps for colorless, sounds good. Talisman of Conviction is even better than our Boros Signet. It's 2 generic mana for an artifact that taps for colorless mana, or it taps for red or white if we're willing to let it do a damage to us. Typically, the way this works is we're always going to tap this for colorless mana, unless we really need colored mana. And at that point, the fact that we need the colored mana means that colored mana is the difference between us casting a spell or not. Casting a spell or not, 1 mana being the difference between casting a spell or not, is sort of like saying, are we willing to pay a life in order to cast this spell for 1 cheaper? Absolutely we are. So a single damage over the course of the game, we could do this 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, does not matter. Each of those times, it was the difference between us casting a spell or not. Totally worth it. Next up is Terrapact Intimidator. We've seen it before. It makes us lander tokens. It's most likely going to make us lander tokens the whole game. If our opponent that we choose when it enters always lets us have a 4/3 for 2, sweet. But otherwise, we're going to be able to use it to make little Wayfarer's Bauble-esque lander tokens that we can use to keep ramping us. Professional Facebreaker gives us treasure tokens when our creatures deal combat damage to our opponents. Restoration of Iganjo, I mentioned the trick where we use it to discard a land and then bring that land right back, tapped, with the second chapter. Sarvex Tome is a mana rock, taps for colorless, sometimes 2 colorless if we have the initiative. Solemn Simulacrum, Rampant Growth when it enters, and Anti-Causal Vestige ramps out a permanent, which can be a land. Sweet, that is our acceleration section. Let's talk now about interaction, which is just tagged as removal here. We're in a red deck, so we're running Lightning Bolt. A single red for an instant that does 3 damage to any target. It's from Alpha, it's amazing, put it in your red decks. You don't have to run the Strixhaven Mystical Archive printing of it, but it is rad. But there are plenty of rad arts for Lightning Bolt, including the original Chris Rush art. So yeah, run Lightning Bolt. So Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares, I often say, are basically the same card. They only have one difference. They're both a single white for an instant that exiles a target creature and gives that creature's controller a kickback. Swords to Plowshares lets that creature's controller gain life equal to the creature's power, whereas Path to Exile lets that creature's controller Rampant Growth. So both of these are premium, unconditional removal for a single white mana at instant speed. Yeah, they belong in your white decks. Airbender Ascension. Can you guess which set this is from? This is 1 and a white for an enchantment that says when it enters, airbend up to 1 target creature. Airbending a creature, airbending a permanent, means exiling that permanent, and its owner can cast it from exile for 2 generic mana rather than whatever casting cost it had. But normal timing restrictions apply. So if we have Airbender Ascension enter, what we want to do is airbend somebody's biggest, scariest permanent. It's biggest, scariest creature, because of course this only hits creatures. Just get it out of the way. This is a way for us to break through the line for a bunch of defenders, to turn off a value piece for at least a turn, whatever we need to do. We can also do it on one of our own creatures so that we can rebuy their effects. If we have a really sweet enters trigger, like Belonging, for example, we might airbend our own Belonging and then pay 2 to recast it and make those 3 shapeshifter creature tokens again, anew. It's also something nice we could do this with. For example, let's use Belonging again. Let's say we've attacked with our commander, flickered Belonging, and now we've made 3 new shapeshifters and attacked with Belonging, and it's tapped. And it's, assuming it survived combat, we can then Airbender Ascension, airbend it, and recast it this same turn, and now it's untapped, plus we get its enters trigger again. Lots of different uses for airbending for just 2 mana. But that's not why it's in this deck. It says whenever a creature we control enters, put a quest counter on this enchantment. This is Alliance, but every creature is other than this, because this is not a creature. So we're going to get lots and lots of creatures entering, and we're going to get a bunch of quest counters on this. But it doesn't matter how many we have as long as we have at least 4. It doesn't matter how many we have beyond 4, I should say. Because at the beginning of our end step, if this enchantment has 4 or more quest counters on it, we exile up to 1 target creature we control and then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. This is a straight up blink, just a normal flicker that we can use on any of our creatures, like I just mentioned with Belonging, that happens to be tapped because we attacked with it, including our commander. But we usually want to use this on things that have leaves or enters the battlefield triggers, or both of course, that we want to untap, and we want to get those triggers again. Just a little bit of extra value at our end step every turn, as well as untapping those creatures, is a lot of value for 2 mana, and just having to wait until we have 4 counters on this. Especially since it comes in and gives us the ability to have something enter again anyway, since we airbend it, or we use this as removal, which is why it's in this section. A lot of value you can get from Airbender Ascension here. Next up is Emergency Eject. I think this is a criminally underplayed card in Commander. This is 2 and a white for an instant that destroys a target non-land permanent, and its controller makes a lander token. So a lot of times people will run something like Generous Gift, which is 2 and a white, destroy target permanent, doesn't say non-land. Its controller makes a 3/3 green elephant creature token. That's big. I don't think in decks like the kinds that I build for this channel, the pods that want to see those decks don't want to see land destruction. So Generous Gift isn't as good in those situations as Stroke of Midnight, which is destroy target non-land permanent. Its controller makes a 1/1 human creature token, because a 1/1 is not as dangerous as a 3/3. And if you're not going to hit lands with it anyway, you don't need the ability to hit lands. So you might as well get something that makes a smaller token and hits non-lands. Emergency Eject is even better than that, I believe, because it makes them a lander token. So that's not a creature at all, and it lets them rampant growth, but they have to pay for it. As opposed to, say, Path to Exile, where we let them rampant growth on their own. Obviously, Path to Exile is better because it can, even though it can only hit creatures, it exiles and it's only 1 mana. Emergency Eject is more flexible, costs more, but they have to pay for the rampant growth effect that they get with that lander token. Anyway, I go on this rant in a lot of my videos. Love Emergency Eject. You should play it. Lorna the Third Path enters and destroys up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. Boom. Skyclave Apparition exiles a non-land, non-token permanent that we don't control mana value 4 or less whenever it enters. Splinter destroys a tapped creature when he enters. Eowyn enters and exiles a creature an opponent controls with greater power. Next we have Sky Sovereign. This is a weird inclusion in this deck, but we have to have a vehicle that flies because that's what our commander is driving. Flying car, right? Sky Sovereign looks like a flying car. Yeah, let's go with it. So this is 5 generic mana for a 6/5 legendary artifact vehicle with Crew 3. Meaning, when this comes in, it's just an artifact. And it does fly as an artifact, but it doesn't have a power and toughness until we crew it. Crew means we tap any number of creatures with at least a total power of 3 or more, and then until end of turn, it becomes an artifact creature. That's when its power and toughness becomes relevant. However, when it enters or attacks, it deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. So the thing we want to do with Sky Sovereign is have it come out, let it do its 3 damage, because it entered. Then use a creature to crew it on the next turn, so that we can attack with it and do that 3 damage again, and whatever creature we crewed it with, we will use our commander to blink, so that creature gets to crew it and also attack. We've got a lot of big creatures, so we can definitely overcrew this with one big thing, and now that big thing is getting its value from being blinked, it's getting to attack as well. Sky Sovereign is also attacking, and it's doing 3 damage to a creature or planeswalker. Just being able to, much like with our Springleaf Drum, tap down a creature and still get its value for attacking by flickering it with our commander, just really cool in this deck. So yeah. Also, in case you haven't seen vehicles before, I should mention that you can crew at instant speed. So you can use Sky Sovereign, if it's not already tapped, as a blocker on an opponent's turn, just by crewing it before blocks are declared and declaring it as your blocker. Yeah, I love vehicles. Trumpeting Carnosaur can be discarded for 3 mana in order to do 3 damage to a creature or planeswalker. And Angel of Serenity, of course, exiles up to 3 creatures from the graveyard or battlefield, or from the battlefield or from graveyards when it enters. So that covers our removal section. We are running 2 Wraths. We've seen Curious Colossus, which I've called a Wrath. It does a pretty good imitation of it, humbling an entire player's battlefield, or entire player's board. The other one we have is Avatar's Wrath. 2 and double white for a sorcery that says choose up to 1 target creature and then airbend all other creatures. So what we talked about for airbending before, now it's affecting every creature on the battlefield except for 1. It may be the case that we choose that 1 as our commander, or it may be we choose a different creature of ours that we don't want to have to recast. We could choose an opponent's creature here. This is a political choice we can make. It could be something like an opponent's creature that's hurting whoever has the most creatures in play, punishing that player. So now that player has the most creatures in play. In any case, we're getting everything off the battlefield, but everyone can replay their creatures, including us, if they want to, by just paying the 2 generic mana at the usual timing. However, until our next turn, your opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands, which means even if they put their commander back in the command zone, they can't cast it because that's not from their hand. We are allowed to cast spells from anywhere we have permission to do so. They don't have permission to cast things from anywhere other than their hands until our next turn. So this is a nice way of hopefully closing out the game for us. It's not exactly, it's not like a permanent board wipe, but it's pretty close. And then we exile Avatar's Wrath, so we can't recur it. That covers our support section. Let's go now to our sections of supplementing our game plan, starting with a burn section. We have ways to just burn our opponents. We've seen Lightning Bolt, it can go to the face. We've seen Slash, 2 damage to each opponent every time we have a creature enter. And we've seen the Mirror Battle Sphere, which allows us to attack and do direct damage to the defending player or planeswalker. We also have Weft Stalker Ardent. This is 1 and a red for a 2/3 Drix Artificer from Edge of Eternities that says whenever another creature or artifact we control enters, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. So this is basically what Slash does, except rather than 2 damage, it's 1, but rather than only triggering on creatures, it also triggers on artifacts. So pretty sweet as a way to have some impact tremors going on with the Weft Stalker Ardent. We can warp it in for a single 1 if we want. Maybe we just have 1 extra mana, but not 3 extra mana on a turn where we're having things come in. So we want to get a little bit of extra damage and then let it go to exile and recast it for its full cost later. Probably, however, unless we have some anthem effects or some pump effects or an opponent with a clear board, we probably don't want to do the Tori de Avenant trick by warping this in and then attacking with our commander, because then the Drix will come back as a 2/3 tapped and attacking creature, which means it's likely to die if there's any kind of defense. But if there's defenses that can't hold up to that, sure, might as well. do the tricks. So that's our burn section. Let's talk now about raid. Raid is a mechanic in Magic that cares about attacking. So I've put all of the cards that care about us attacking in this section. Starting with Firebender Ascension, to go with our Airbender Ascension. This is 1 and a red for an enchantment that when it enters, we make a 2/2 red soldier creature token with Firebending 1. Firebending means when that creature attacks, we will add 1 red mana to our pool that does not leave our pool as steps and phases end, or rather as steps end, until the end of combat, basically. So if we keep it in our pool, we don't use it, and combat is over, we lose that red mana. But we can use it during that combat if there are instant spells we can cast with it, or if there are abilities we want to pay for. Yeah, we get a little extra red mana. Not as relevant to us in this deck, but it's nice to have that option with a free 2/2 soldier. In addition, whenever a creature we control attacking causes a triggered ability of that creature to trigger, meaning if one of our creatures triggers and it says when this creature attacks, then that counts. When that happens, we put a quest counter on Firebender Ascension, and when it has 4 or more quest counters on it, we can copy that ability, and we can choose new targets for the copy if we wish. So the idea behind this in this deck, the most simple version, is when our commander attacks, it's going to trigger this, because its flicker ability is a triggered ability being triggered by our commander attacking. We'll put a quest counter on Firebender Ascension, and then, if it has 4 or more, we get to copy that ability, and we get to therefore flicker 2 things if we wish to. We can't flicker the same thing twice because we're having to target 2 different things to flicker. So if we were to target the same thing twice, the first ability would resolve, flickering it. The second one would fizzle because the original version of that creature is no longer on the battlefield. It's become a new game object. But we can flicker 2 things, and that seems pretty good. Also, Firebender Ascension is going to work for many of the other cards in this section because Raid cares about attacking. So we'll see. Leader's Talent is next. This is 1 and a white for a class enchantment, meaning it comes in and has this first ability at level 1. Then at sorcery speed, we can pay 2 and a white to level it up to level 2, and now it has both of these abilities. At sorcery speed, after we've done that, we can pay 3 and a white to level it up to level 3, and now it has all 3 of these abilities. We're just unlocking further abilities. We don't have to do all this on the same turn either. So it says, level 1, whenever we attack, we put a 1/1 counter on target attacking creature. Seems pretty good. Obviously, this is happening with our commander most of all. We're going to be able to put counters on our commander. But one thing I should mention is that we are not going to be able to use this to put counters on the creatures that our commander flickers, because this will trigger when we attack, and at that point we have to put this ability on the stack with a target chosen. Meaning, if we attack with a different creature other than our commander and then flicker that creature, obviously it's not in play when this resolves, unless this resolves first, in which case we've just put a counter on a creature we're about to flicker, so we're going to lose the counter anyway. But we can't put it on that creature after it's been flickered, because this ability is going on the stack at the same time as our commander's ability, which is yet to resolve, because they're just all going on the stack at the same time, and that's when you have to choose targets. So this is relevant for either putting a counter on our commander, or putting a counter on one of our creatures that we're attacking with that we are not going to flicker that turn, just so you know. Then, level 2, whenever a creature we control leaves the battlefield, if it had a counter on it, we gain 2 life. Not super relevant for us, but we're putting counters on our attacking creatures, so it might be the case that we're getting rid of those counters and gaining a little life. Level 3, however, is whenever we cast a spell, we put a +1/+1 counter on each creature we control. This is a terrific way to get counters on all of our stuff, and then we're just flickering whatever's best in play and leaving everything else huge. Seems great. Windcrag Siege is next. This is 1, a red, and a white for an enchantment, and as it enters, we choose Mardu or Jeskai. In this deck, we usually choose Mardu, which says if a creature attacking causes a triggered ability of a permanent we control to trigger, it doesn't have to be that same creature, the way that Firebender Ascension does. That ability triggers an additional time. This is great. It's 1 more mana than Firebender Ascension, and it already doubles our commander's Blink ability, plus any other trigger abilities from our creatures attacking. Pretty sweet. We can, however, also choose Jeskai, or instead choose Jeskai. At the beginning of our upkeep, it says, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token. It gains lifelink and haste until end of turn. So if we just want extra tokens, that's pretty good, but we're built around our commander, so we're generally choosing Mardu in this deck. We've seen the Caves of Chaos Adventurer. It exiles the top card of our library when we attack with it. So that means if we have Windcrag Siege in play, it's going to exile the top 2, and we can cast them this turn for free if we've completed a dungeon. Otherwise, we just have access to casting them this turn, playing them this turn, rather. Similar situation with Firebender Ascension. Tori Davenant triggers whenever she attacks, giving all of our other attacking creatures +1/+1, giving the red creatures that are attacking trample, and the attacking white creatures get untapped. Wurn War Leader, its second mode, whenever we attack, is all of our attacking creatures get +1/+1. Sally Pride puts a 1/1 counter on all of our attacking creatures whenever she attacks. I'm sorry, on all of our creatures, period, when she attacks. Slash attacks and makes a 2/2 mutant, which will trigger all the alliance triggers, including our commander and Slash themselves. Duke. The Duke, it's not really a raid trigger, but it does mean we're going to be able to attack with something and have that thing gain. That thing will have Myriad, so it's like a raid trigger. It means attacking matters for us. That's why it's in this section. Sanctuary Warden draws us a card and makes us a 1/1 citizen when we remove a counter from a creature or planeswalker we control whenever it enters or attacks. Mirror Battlesphere, when it attacks, gets a boost and does direct damage to the defender if we tap any number of Mirror when it does so. And finally, we have a new card that we haven't seen yet. This is a Room enchantment from Duskmourn. This is a split card permanent. So let's talk about how this works. When this is in our hand, we can cast it either as Dollmaker Shop or Porcelain Gallery. It is an enchantment either way. Let's say we cast it as Dollmaker Shop. When we do, it goes on the stack and it is just Dollmaker Shop. It has a mana value of 2. It will enter, and now it's a split card with this side, which is called a door, unlocked. This door is locked, meaning we basically treat it as though it only has these characteristics. It is a white 2 mana value enchantment called Dollmaker Shop that says whenever one or more non-toy creatures we control attack a player, we make a 1/1 white toy artifact creature token. It's not tapped and attacking, but this means we're going to be getting a lot of little toys littering our board because we're going to do a lot of attacking. Pretty good. Then, at any time at sorcery speed, we can pay the cost of Porcelain Gallery and unlock this door as well. And now, it has the attributes of both sides. So Porcelain Gallery says, creatures you control have base power and toughness, each equal to the number of creatures you control. So if we have 5 creatures in play, they are all base power and toughness 5/5. Pretty great. So the idea behind this is, we want Porcelain Gallery because it pumps up our whole team. Dollmaker Shop also helps it by giving us an extra creature every turn, which will add to this number, but is a raid type trigger whenever we attack with any number of creatures that it has at least one non-toy in it. So yeah, we want to get both of them. Dollmaker Shop is easier to get out early, and then we can just pay for Porcelain Gallery whenever we want. We can, however, cast the Porcelain Gallery first, and then Dollmaker Shop later, or never. Either way. Anyway, that is our raid section. Let's talk now about the ways we pump our creatures up. We've seen a number of these. Leader's Talent lets us put a 1/1 counter on an attacking creature when we attack, and puts 1/1 counters on all of our creatures when we cast any spell at level 3. Suki, Courageous Rescuer, is 1 and double white for a 2/4 legendary human warrior ally, relevant for our Appa card, that says other creatures we control get +1/+0. Pretty sweet. Just a constant bonus, even without us attacking, to our power for all of our creatures, including our commander. And whenever another permanent we control leaves the battlefield during our turn, pretty good for our flickering, we make a 1/1 white ally creature token, but only once each turn. That's okay, we're likely, unless we have Firebender Ascension or Windcrag Siege in play, probably not going to have multiple flickers happening, but we might have creatures die, which is also leaving the battlefield. Anyway, we are likely to get at least get one ally creature token from Suki every turn. That'll be a 2/1 essentially. Memorial Team Leader, we've already seen. During our turn, our other creatures get +1/+0. Tori, when she attacks, can give all of our attacking creatures +1/+1, as well as maybe trample and maybe getting untapped. Warren War Leader gives our attacking creatures +1/+1 until end of turn, if we choose that. Angel of Invention gives a constant +1/+1 to all of our other creatures. Kin Binding is next. This is from Lorwyn Eclipse, 3 and double white for an enchantment that says our creatures get +X/X, where X is the number of creatures that entered the battlefield under our control this turn. So not only is this going to give us definitely +1/+1 every time we flicker something, since we'll have that creature enter, but also at the beginning of combat on our turn, we make a 1/1 green and white Kithkin creature token. So this is always going to be giving us at least +1/+1, probably +2/+2 to all of our creatures, maybe more than that if the creatures that we're having enter are making additional creatures, like Belonging does. Sally Pride is another great example. Puts a 1/1 counter on each creature we control whenever she attacks. Pretty solid. Appa gives all of our creatures +1/+1 flying and vigilance until end of turn whenever it or another ally enters. And we've seen Porcelain Gallery just a moment ago that makes all of our creatures have base power and toughness equal to the number of creatures we control. Solid. That's our pump section. Let's talk about the ways that we get past our opponent's defenders. So we've seen 4 of these. Eowyn lets us remove a creature that an opponent controls with greater power whenever she enters, and legendary creatures we control gain protection from each of that creature's colors until end of turn. Protection means we can't be blocked. Our legendary creatures can't be blocked by creatures with of those colors. So if an opponent is mono green and we exile a green creature, our legendary creatures have protection from green, so we can attack with our commander with impunity. Yeah. Headliner Scarlet, when she enters, creatures target player controls can't block this turn. Makes it very simple for us. Tori gives our red attacking creatures trample. Trample is an evasive ability. Appa gives our creatures flying, which is a great evasive ability. And we also have, from the Warhammer 40k decks, this Inquisitorial Rosette. For 2 generic mana, we get an equipment that equips for 3, so a little bit of mana here. And it says Inquisition Agents. Whenever the equipped creature attacks, which may be our commander, we create a 2/2 white Astartes Warrior creature token with vigilance that's attacking. It doesn't say tapped and attacking because it has vigilance. And then attacking creatures gain menace until end of turn. So if we stack this trigger properly, this will resolve last of all of our attack triggers to give every creature that is attacking, including the ones that entered tapped and attacking thanks to our opponent, or thanks to our commander rather, menace, which is a very solid evasive ability. That is our evasion section. Let's talk now about our protection section. We've got 2 cards here. Eowyn, as we've seen, gives actual factual protection to our legendary creatures whenever she exiles another creature based on that creature's toughness. We're also running Swiftfoot Boots. This is to help our commander particularly. 2 generic mana for an equipment that equips for 1 and gives that equipped creature hexproof and haste. Hexproof on our commander, pretty solid. We have a lot of creatures that give us good value when they come in. We want to use our commander to get even more value out of them, so we're not desperate if our commander has died, and we're not defenseless. But it's pretty nice to not have to recast our commander if we don't have to, so giving them hexproof is pretty solid. And haste doesn't hurt either. That is our protection section. We next have a section called cheats. These are cards that we've seen all of. These are cards that we're using the ability of our commander to flicker these cards as a way to get around their casting cost or get around their restrictions. So Halia and Wefstalker Ardent, for example, both have warp for a single mana. We're not likely to do it with the Wefstalker Ardent, but we sure could with Halia, or either one really. Just warp it in, attack with our commander, flicker Halia or the Ardent, and then they come right back in, and we've gotten around their warp cost. The same is actually true of Memorial Team Leader, Anti-Causal Vestige, and Bygone Colossus. Traxos is in this section because Traxos comes in tapped and doesn't untap during our untap step, but with our commander we can still attack with him without having to cast historic spells to untap him, although we do have plenty of those. Platoon Dispenser is here because we can unearth it and then flicker it so that it doesn't go away at the end step, even though it ought to with Unearth. Haha, the cheats. And of course, Combat Thresher is here for a similar reason with Prototype. Similar, I guess, to Warp. We're casting it for a smaller amount, and then we're flickering it to get it back to its full value. Pretty good. That's our cheats section. Let's talk about our synergy. These are cards that give us rewards for doing what we were doing anyway, and that help our game plan in the process. So Firebender Ascension and Windcrag Siege are both in this section because they care about us attacking and let us get attack triggers again. So we want to be able to double up on our triggers for our commander. Leader's Talent is in this section because if we have counters on a creature that leaves the battlefield, it gains us 2 life. It's not a great synergy, but it's there. Biggest of all, though, is our Panharmonicon. This is 4 generic mana for an artifact that says if an artifact or creature entering causes a triggered ability of a permanent we control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So much like Windcrag Siege and Firebender Ascension can double up on our attack triggers, Panharmonicon doubles up on our enters triggers for anything that is an artifact or creature that would trigger from our things entering. Or rather, any of our permanents triggering whenever one of our artifacts or creatures enters. So for example, Airbender Ascension will double trigger with Panharmonicon because Airbender Ascension, even though it is an enchantment, triggers when creatures enter. So it will double trigger with Panharmonicon. This gives us an awful lot of value and is also therefore removal bait for our opponents. So maybe they use the removal spell on our Panharmonicon rather than, let's say, Sky Sovereign. That will be fine. You know, we're trading a 4-mana artifact for one of their removal spells that they then can't use on one of our better threats. Totally good. That is our synergy section. I've mentioned we have initiative in this deck. I just wanted to set aside that there is a section for it. Obviously, all of these sections have more cards in them in the considering portion of this Moxfield page. So if you want to check that out, you'll see other initiative creatures. I picked these because Cerebex Tome gives us the ability to cast something for free and also pretty solid acceleration. Caves of Chaos Adventurer is a 5/3 trampler that also essentially draws us cards. And Goliath Paladin doesn't do anything but take the initiative, but is very likely to survive combat so we can flicker it multiple times with our commander. That's our initiative section. We have a little bit of Blink, which we have right up here at the top. This deck could go heavier into the Blink, but we don't really need it to. We're getting a lot of value out of it just with our commander. However, Airbender Ascension, as we've already seen, lets us very quickly in this deck do a Conjurer's Closet impersonation, just flickering one of our creatures at the end step every turn. We also have Far Traveler, which is 2 and a white for a legendary background enchantment, which gives an ability to our commander. It says commander creatures you own have, at the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target tapped creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. That doesn't just untap that creature, because it was untapped and now it's re-entered. I guess unless it's Traxos, which it would enter tapped. But it also gives us the benefit of blinking it, which is to say all of its enters triggers and all of the other things that we have that care about creatures entering. So Far Traveler, especially very nice in this deck because it can only work to flicker tapped creatures. The Neutrinos puts whatever creature it flickers into play tapped and attacking. So Far Traveler gets to untap it and also get its enters benefits as well. That covers our Blink section. Let's talk about our recursions now. We have a few ways to recur things from our graveyard. Restoration of Iganjo can bring something back that's mana value 2 or less whenever we discard a card for its second chapter ability. Platoon Dispenser can bring itself back with its Unearth ability. Angel of Indemnity and Belonging both have an Encore ability for 6 and double white, happens to be the same cost for both. And Angel of Serenity we can use to recur our own creature cards from our graveyards if they're what we exile when it enters. Usually we're using this for removal, but we can recur our own stuff from our graveyard back to our hands if we want to. That's a nice little raised dead effect. Our last section of spells is our token section. I believe we've probably seen all of these. So just to go through it quickly, Firebender Ascension comes in and makes a 2/2 red soldier with firebending. Inquisitorial Rosette, when we attack with the equipped creature, makes a 2/2 attacking vigilant Astartes warrior. Suki gives us a 1/1 ally whenever one of our permanents leaves the battlefield during our turn. Restoration of Iganjo's backside, Architect of Restoration, makes us a 1/1 Spirit. Windcrag Siege can make these 1/1 Goblin creature tokens that gain lifelink and haste until end of turn. Warren War Leader can not just make a 1/1 Rabbit, but also can make an offspring of itself. Angel of Invention can make servos, which are 1/1 artifact creature tokens. Cloud Goat Ranger can make us some 1/1 white Kithkin Soldier creature tokens. Kinbinding makes 1/1 green and white Kithkins, also relevant for tapping with Cloud Goat Ranger. Platoon Dispenser makes us 1/1 Soldier artifact creature tokens. Sally and Slash both make us 2/2 red mutant creature tokens. Angel of Indemnity and Belonging both make token copies of themselves when we encore them. The Duke lets us make myriad copies of a creature we choose whenever we go to combat. Sanctuary Warden makes 1/1 Citizens. Mirror Battlesphere makes 1/1 Mirrors. And Dollmaker Shop makes 1/1 toy artifact creature tokens. And that is every spell in our deck. As usual, we're going to go over our lands now. We're running 20 basic lands, 8 mountains, 12 plains. It's a pretty good mix for what we have. So easy to have plenty of... we have plenty of lands in this deck that are going to come in untapped, so we have our mana right away. We're running Glittering Massif. It's a bicycle land. This is a mountain plains. It's a land that comes in tapped, but it has both basic types, so it taps for red or white inherently. Also, we can cycle it for 2 generic mana, meaning when it's in our hand, if we pay 2 and discard it, we can draw a card. This is nice if we happen to draw it later in the game, when we have plenty of mana already, sort of the same as what we would do if we cash in our Mind Stone. Or if we have it early on and we really just need a card, we can also use it that way. Typically, if there is a way for me to fetch for this, such as with our Knight of the White Orchid, I would like to get this if I'm able to, assuming I don't need mana that turn, or don't need this mana that turn, because this is one that will always come in tapped otherwise. We're running Clifftop Retreat. It is a check land. This is a land that taps for red or white, and it comes in tapped unless we control a mountain or a plains. That includes the 20 basics we're running, but also Glittering Massif, because it is a mountain plains. We also have a Tango land in this deck. So 22 different cards in our deck that can make the Clifftop Retreat come in untapped. If you want a little bit more consistency, although I don't think it's much more consistency with 22 typed lands in this deck, you could run Sundown Pass, which is a slow land you could upgrade to. More expensive than Clifftop Retreat, but there it is. And if you wanted to upgrade the Glittering Massif, Sacred Foundry, the shock land, is a fine option for you. We're running both filter lands in our colors, Rugged Prairie and Sun-Scorched Divide. This is just like our Boros Signet, but on a land. Pay 1, tap it, and it makes a red and a white, filters our mana into the colors we need. Rugged Prairie, on the other hand, taps for colorless without us having to pay anything into it. But if we do pay a red or a white into it, we can tap it for double red, double white, or one of each. So a lot more flexibility here. However, it can't make colored mana unless we put colored mana into it. Whereas Sun-Scorched Divide can make colored mana if we only put colorless mana into this generic mana cost. So both have a home here. We're running these 4 fixing lands. These are sort of the general ones I put in my decks. Command Tower has the same text as Arcane Signet. Add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. So in this deck, white or red, comes in untapped. It's an untapped dual land. Of course we're going to run it. We would run it if it was a tapped dual, like Path of Ancestry. This is a land that comes in tapped but has the same text as Command Tower. However, when we use its mana to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with our commander, we scry 1. So not only does this work on our commander, of course, because our commander is a rebel elf, an elf rebel, I guess, we have Sally Pride, which is a rebel, and we have Rumor Gatherer, which is an elf. So this is 3 creatures that can give us a scry on top of our tapped dual land. That seems okay. We're running Myriad Landscape. This is a land that comes in tapped and taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap, and sack it to search our library for up to 2 basic lands that share a land type. So in this deck, either 2 basic plains or 2 basic mountains. We can then put them on the battlefield tapped, and we shuffle. So while this is quite slow, you know, the landscape comes in tapped, as do the lands we find, and we have to pay to activate this. It is 1 land drop that turns into 2 lands, so it is a little bit of acceleration in our mana base. So yeah, I think it's worth running. Similarly, we have Temple of the False God. Not everyone loves this land, but this is an untapped land that taps for 2 colorless mana if we have 4 or more other lands, so 5 lands including itself. So this is acceleration. It's unconditional extra mana, just not early on. I say unconditional because it's not like a Karoo, a bounce land sort of thing. So if your opening hand is basic mountain and this, probably you want a mulligan. But if you can get this out on turn 5 or sometimes even turn 3 in this deck, it can really accelerate you. You go from 4 mana to 6 mana, and that's pretty solid. We are running Battlefield Forge. It's a pain land. This is the same as our Talisman of Conviction. You know, taps for colorless or a red or a white if we let it do a damage to us. Everything I said about the Talisman is relevant here too. If you wanted to upgrade this, Needle Verge Pathway is a pretty good option. It's a modal double-faced land. The front side taps for white, the backside taps for red. You get to choose when you play it. That seems pretty good. I like the pathways. Fury Calm Snarl is next. This is a reveal land. It says it taps for red or white, and as it enters, we can reveal a mountain or a plains from our hand, and if we don't, it comes in tapped. So we've got 22 cards in this deck that we could reveal from our hand to have this come in untapped. Otherwise, it's a tapped duel. If you would like to upgrade this, I recommend Sunbillow Verge. It's a Verge land that will come in untapped no matter what, and tap for both colors if we have a mountain or a plains. Temple of Triumph is next. It's one of the temples. Comes in tapped, adds red or white, and scries 1 when it enters. So we get a guaranteed scry when this enters. That seems pretty good. If you want to upgrade this, you could go to the Surveil land Elegant Parlor. Much more expensive than what this is, and in this deck, kind of a similar effect, but I guess you could fetch for it with your Knight of the White Orchid. That's a possibility. All of these upgrades that I'm suggesting are much more expensive than the lands that we have in here. So yeah, Radiant Summit is next. This is our Tango land. It is a mountain plains, just like our Bicycle land is, and it enters tapped unless we control 2 or more basic lands, which is pretty likely for us to have in a lot of situations with Radiant Summit coming in, especially if we have 2 mountains, or 2 basic mountains, 2 basic plains, or one of each, and we get our Knight of the White Orchid to fetch us a land, we can fetch the Radiant Summit, and it can come in untapped. So that's pretty sweet for us. Again, you can upgrade this to Sacred Foundry, the Shock land. Our last section is this utility section. We've got Castle Ardenvale to start us off. This is a land that comes in tapped unless we control a plains. We've got a lot of those, including our typed duels. It taps for white, or we can pay 2 and double white and tap it to make a 1/1 white human creature token. So the fact that this is a large expense, 4 mana plus tapping the castle just to make a 1/1, means we're not going to be using this that often. But Castle Ardenvale is quite cheap right now, and it's just a land that taps for the color that we are more of than our other color. So the cost of inclusion is very low in this. Also, it looks like a cake. Demolition Field is next. I mentioned earlier that in the kind of decks that I build, the pods that want to see them don't smile upon land destruction. But you do have to have an answer for a problematic non-basic, and Demolition Field is the right one for these kinds of decks. So Demolition Field comes in untapped and taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap, and sack it to destroy a non-basic land that an opponent controls, and then that opponent can search for a basic land, put it on the battlefield untapped, and shuffle, and so can we. So neither player, we or they, is down a land. So even though it is land destruction, and we've gotten rid of their problematic Rogue's Passage, or Glacial Chasm, or any number of other things, we've answered a threat, or preemptively answered an answer that they had, and replaced it with a land so that they can tap right away if they want to, so they're not actually losing out on mana, assuming they had a basic land left in their library. So this is, even at the kind of pods that my decks are made for, pretty acceptable as a form of an answer to a problematic non-basic land. Rogue's Passage is next. Comes in untapped, taps for colorless, or we can pay 4, tap it, and a creature can't be blocked this turn. That's pretty good. It helps us close things out when we're attacking with our big creatures. It helps us protect our commander, since our commander can't be blocked, so it's not going to die to a flying blocker, or protect our creatures on the ground. It can get damage in. It also can be used politically, because it doesn't say target creature we control. So we can say to opponent A, look, I know you want to attack opponent B, but you're worried about their blockers. We can use our Rogue's Passage to make your creature unblockable once you've attacked with it, because we won't do it before you attack, because then you could attack us unblockably. But once you attack, we can make your creature unblockable, and, you know, you just owe us for that. Or maybe you leave us alone for a turn cycle, something like that. Most players will agree to that, since we're spending essentially 5 mana, 4 plus tapping the passage itself, to help them out. But it also helps us out, because not only are we getting some goodwill at the table, and hopefully getting something in return for that, we're also doing damage to opponent B using opponent A's resources, their time, their turn, their creatures, etc. Finally, Rogue's Passage is great to activate when an opponent attacks a different opponent, even without making a deal. Opponent B attacks opponent C with a big creature. We want them to do all that damage, so we just make their creature unblockable. It's a surprise for everyone. It's a lot of fun. Next up is Slayer's Stronghold. This is an untapped land, taps for colorless, or we can pay a red, a white, and tap it to give target creature +2/+0 and vigilance and haste until end of turn. Like I was mentioning with the last, we can certainly use this on an opponent's card, but we're mostly using this for our own benefits. We want to pump up our commander and give them vigilance, or we want to have one of our creatures that just came in that we are not planning to blink, since we maybe have a better creature to blink, but we do want them to attack, so we can use the Slayer Stronghold to give them vigilance, give them haste, and give them +2/+0. Sunhome Fortress of the Legion is next. Untapped land that taps for colorless, but if we pay 2, a red, a white, and tap it, target creature gains a double strike until end of turn. This is really great, because not only is double strike just very solid on its own, it can turn a bad block into a great block. It can protect one of our creatures that is tapped and attacking that we flickered with our commander just because we wanted that extra enters trigger that it might have had. And now an opponent is blocking it and it looks like it's going to die. We activate Sunhome, give that creature double strike, and now a creature of ours that might have been eaten by an opponent now trades with that creature. Or maybe it was trading already, and now double strike makes it not trade, it just kills that creature. This can just be a removal effect for us if it's targeted correctly. So yeah, lots of flexibility here. And just like with the Slayer Stronghold and the Castle Ardenvale, this is a land. It mostly comes in, this one comes in untapped all the time. Castle Ardenvale mostly does. The cost of inclusion for these cards is so low in this deck. The same is true of Windbrisk Heights. This is a tapped land that taps for white, but it has Hideaway 4, which means when it enters, we look at the top 4 cards of our library and we exile one of them face down under Windbrisk Heights and put the rest on the bottom in a random order. Then we can pay a white and tap Windbrisk Heights if we attacked with 3 or more creatures this turn to play the exiled card without paying its mana cost. So this is a bonus card for us, just a bonus spell that we can cast on many of the turns in our game, because a lot of the time we're attacking with 3 or more creatures every turn. Seems great. I do want to make mention though, that it says if you attacked. If you attacked does not mean if you at any point had 3 creatures that were attacking. Attack, like I said at the top of the video, means declare as an attacker during the declare as attacker step. So if you play a creature, then go to combat, attack with your commander and a different creature, and flicker the creature you played this turn, and so now it's attacking, that does not qualify for Windbrisk Heights. You have to actually declare 3 attackers during the declare attacker step in order to activate Windbrisk Heights' last ability. That's how that works. And that sums it up. Again, I'm releasing new TMNT Commander decks every Thursday through mid-April when Secrets of Strixhaven drops. So let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a specific commander or style of deck. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you want to support what I do here, make sure to like and subscribe, ring the bell if you want to be notified when my videos go live, consider becoming a member of the channel. It's a new thing I'm doing. But most of all, remember that magic is fun. You should play more Magic.